Rudy's revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. It is Tuesday, March 11th. Welcome to the episode. Well, there's a lot to get to, a lot of news to get to, and I'm starting a little late today, so excuse me for that. But also, we have to understand what's happening and put all these pieces together, all these puzzle pieces, and realize what's happening is the desperate establishment is striking back in a bunch of different heinous ways, and I'm going to go into that right now. So let's get into the news today for today, Tuesday, March 11th. All right, before we get started, I just want to ask you to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. All right, we're going to start out with the Washington Examiner here, which is or has the headline, "What's Going On with Act Blue?" Well, I'll tell you what's going on. PJ Media is reporting that Elon Musk alleges Act Blue funded protesters at Tesla stores after investigation. So Elon Musk is stating that he investigated and found out through face recognition and other ways that, you know what? I've had it with fucking Rumble. All right. I don't know. My streams for the last 2 days now are all fucked up. So I'm going to start live streaming to YouTube simulcast, because I can't just have, the audio's fine, but the video is hanging up all the time now. It's driving me fucking crazy. Anyway, back to the fucking news. PJ Media, Elon Musk alleges Act Blue funded protesters at Tesla stores after investigations. Now, what I wanted to get into today, first and foremost, is you have to understand the landscape. So up top, obviously, are all sorts of rich individuals that indeed make the world go round, for lack of a better term. But things that they do, money trickles down through NGOs, and what rich people don't like to do is spend their own money. So what they do is they take your tax dollars, they have the federal government fund NGOs who then fund activists et al. And so you're going to have a hard time tracing the money, following the money. So I can see my feed is fucked up again. I don't know what's happening with Rumble. I test a Rumble and it failed recently, and I tested on YouTube. It worked fine. So I know for streaming, I'm running like on a hair of RAM, but it was working fine before. I don't know why it's not working now. So bear with me. All right. So he alleges Act Blue. Elon Musk has accused Act Blue, this is from PJ Media, the Democrat fundraising machine, of financially backing the 5 Marxist organizations behind the protests at Tesla showrooms across the country. The CEO of Tesla accuses these Democrat-funded groups of organizing AstroTurf protests against him. Well, what is AstroTurf? Well, AstroTurf is fake. So AstroTurf is fake grass. So it really refers to fake grass roots organizations that supposedly are working against Trump and other people involved in the Trump administration and or MAGA folks, whatever. So Act Blue is one of the biggest Democrat fundraising machines, but so they don't have the government money to spend anymore on these NGOs, and so they have to raise it themselves, but they are fighting against not just Trump, because Trump has proved to be impervious to their attacks now, so they're going after Musk. Not only going after Musk, but as I said the other day, going after his businesses, sabotaging SpaceX. There was a hack attack I'm going to get to in just a second on X yesterday. For Real Clear Politics, Elon Musk were giving billions of taxpayer dollars to NGOs that are essentially scams. A New York Post, Elon Musk says X was knocked offline by massive cyber attack that originated in Ukrainian area. It's the CIA, right? The CIA runs Ukraine. It's running the Ukrainian war effort against Russia. We all know that. I mean, that's not something that's somehow debatable. It's not debatable. So they could have made it look Russian. Certainly they have the capability of doing that. You know, is it Ukraine? I don't think this kind of misnomer that Ukraine is somehow a special, has always been a special military power with great, intelligence capabilities and special operations capabilities, and they're so good at shooting missiles and using drones and whatever. That's not true. The U.S. is running the war there, and if officially the U.S. stops running the war there, they are still remnants of what is known as the deep state, the establishment, or what have you, that can still pull strings. One American News is reporting that Musk says there's a massive cyber attack happening at X following outages, and this was happening yesterday afternoon. So Musk is attacked. So this is a counterattack by the establishment. No ifs, ands, or buts, and it's going to get worse, and we're going to get into the avenues. Everybody's speculating that there's going to be a huge cyber attack, a huge outage, probably over the summer, and they're going to blame Trump. So, everything is going to fall on Trump's shoulders, but they're not going to let him get away with what he's trying to do. As you know, the establishment is outside the political parties, so it's both Democrat and Republican, but it's run mostly by wealthy individuals or through corporations or shell companies, et cetera, et cetera. Reuters is reporting White House pushes back against recession talk as household worries grow, stocks tank. Zero Hedge reports, though, futures rebound from worst plunge of 2025 as Trump meets CEOs. So what's happening here? Larry Kudlow referred to the position we're in now as a correction period. Always when you're taking drastic economic turns or fiscal turns, you're going to have some sort of correction. So this isn't, it's not time to worry yet. Some people are worried about falling into recession. We're not even in bear territory yet. So although it could be right around the corner, and we'll probably suffer through a bear market, probably 6 months or so. I mean, if they could say inflation was transitory, we could certainly say there's going to be a slight correction period. Yeah, my Rumble feed is just not working. Didn't work yesterday, so I have to apologize for that as well. And then on Friday, it was also bad. Market Watch is reporting panic selling tends to follow uncertainty. Here's how to make smarter moves. If you're in the market, obviously you can make money off downturns and upticks. So either or, depending, if you're what you're following, what data points you're following, etc. We are in uncertainty. It's the tariffs that are freaking out companies for the most part. But there is uncertainty all around. So with the cuts of funding and what have you. So we'll have to see. Well, Charlie Gasparino from the New York Post writes, ignore the stock market, Wall Street dealing with painful detox from government spending addiction. Sort of what I just went into previously is that we're in, and as Larry Kudlow said also, we're in a correction phase. But the powers that be and the Democrats are going to use this correction period as some sort of Chicken Little talk. The sky is falling economically. The economy worries everybody, indeed, but, you know, things have to be done. You have to turn the ship of state around, and that course correction is going to make some people seasick. All right, let's get into some other news here from the National Review. A judge blocks deportation of anti-Israel Columbia grad after ICE arrest. To be honest here, I don't like that headline from the National Review. Judge blocks deportation of anti-Israel Columbia grad. Is he anti-Israel or was he pro-Hamas? Because I think, as I talked about yesterday, if you're a citizen of the United States, well, you get all your First Amendment rights. But if you're just someone visiting here, I don't think you should have as robust First Amendment freedom of speech rights. And if you're a protester, it's understandable. But I think if you're out in the streets, it's better to be pro something than anti something, but whatever. They have free speech too, but keeping people from going in class or physically intimidating people or threatening the dean for that matter, is something that should be strongly reconsidered. All right, the Free Press. Inside the Trump resistance funded by the ultra-wealthy. Anti-Trump groups like Families Over Billionaires present themselves as grassroots campaigns for ordinary Americans. The truth is very different, and we just talked about this being AstroTurf. Grassroots that isn't really grassroots. It was the same thing with Black Lives Matter. The funding was coming mostly from Soros, from the Open Society Foundation, but through other umbrella shell companies and so forth and so on. And what we found out and what we are finding out is that the network, the establishment network, I guess that's why they call it the octopus, was far-reaching and had its tentacles everywhere. Let's just read some of this article from Free Press. Like a surprising number of Trump 2.0 resistance pop-up groups, Families Over Billionaires owes its existence not only to smaller donations from ordinary Americans or to grassroots organizers, but to a single entity, the consulting firm Arabella Advisors, which oversees a massive dark money network bankrolled by the super rich and aligned with the Democratic Party. The network relies on support from billionaires like Bill Gates, eBay founder Pierre Omidyar, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, and Democratic mega donor George Soros, which it is said. In other words, it's not families over billionaires so much as it's billionaires over other billionaires. The resistance is almost pure AstroTurf, not grassroots, said Scott Walter, the president of the Capital Research Center, a conservative think tank that investigates left-leaning philanthropies. It's a plaything of the mega donors uninterested in ordinary Americans' money. Indeed. Now, we know that for a fact. So what we're going to look at now is who are the agents of the establishment? What is their plan? What are they doing? And as I posited last week, is that they are going to take on and throw up obstacles for each department of Trump's administration, because Trump has proved impervious and he's well liked. And so they're trying to sway people by going after the people that he's using, Elon Musk most predominantly, but also all the other cabinet heads. And I think that's why they were voted in to make for easy targets. But let's start in Ukraine first and foremost. Just the news. Arizona Senator Kelly goes to Ukraine after a tense meeting at White House. So he met with Trump, and Trump's like, go fuck yourself, Mark Kelly. So Mark Kelly is now the new John McCain. And he's trying to be, let's just be honest. It would take a cursory investigation to really find out the history of Ukraine. So all these people blathering on, like Mark Kelly, on different news programs, really belittling the American public. As I just said, it would take a cursory investigation to figure out the history of what's going on in Ukraine. So people are really that care about, they're not going to, Ukraine's long history as a nation, as a sovereign nation of 30 years, compared to the security concerns of a nuclear power, and an imperial power, Russia, is something. And as Jesse Waters so prominently put it, how are we going to eject Russia from eastern Ukraine? It's not going to work. In any case, let's move on to other foreign policy issues. One American News, Steve Witkoff reveals Zelensky apologized to Trump in letter. Rubio arrives in Saudi Arabia for peace talks. Positive first step. We knew Zelensky apologized because that's what he had to do to get U.S. to even support him, even tacitly. And I guess one of the supports is that Kiev launches 337 drones at Russia in war's largest UAV attack yet. Moscow claims, this is from the New York Post. So 337 drones is a drone swarm if it's at Moscow. And that's why drone swarms are so deadly and coordinated. They really, what was it? White House Down? What was the movie where it illustrated how effective drone swarms can be? And I guess one person died in this attack. Now, this could be using leverage in the peace talks, perhaps. Perhaps it is. We know Russia is trying to make advances as we let our guard down there in Ukraine. But the fact that it says Kiev or Ukraine launches 337 drones, oh, really? They have the drones, the drone building capability. They have the expertise to launch a drone swarm attack. Really? Because this is the forefront of warfare technology, and the Ukrainians just know how to do it. Or from BBC, Ukraine says talks with U.S. very constructive hours after Moscow drone attack kills 3. It was 3. I think I said it was 1. Excuse me there. And this is an even more important story from Zero Hedge. Democracy dies in Romania after winning in December. Georgescu now banned from May presidential election. So if you don't know what's going on in this story, is Romania the canary in the death of democracy coal mine? Now, last month, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke at the Munich Security Conference, and said Europe is failing democracy. And he talked specifically about the ability to speak freely online, particularly, but also in protesting in the UK, protesting abortion clinics by standing across the street and praying to yourself. you could get arrested for that. So that's free speech, and that's so he complained about free speech, but more at issue here is what happened in Romania. If you didn't know, a conservative, right-wing president, anti-Ukrainian war president, Galen, was it Galen or Kalen? Gegescu, who won resoundingly, and then the EU just canceled the elections. And so if you didn't know what was going on here, what we do know is that they didn't want him or another Viktor Orban type leader, particularly in Eastern Europe, and that would grow the call to end the war or support for the war in Ukraine. So after canceling the election in which he won, now they banned him from the presidential election. Why? Because along the lines of what happened with Donald Trump is apparently he's a puppet of Putin. And that the only reason he won the election is because Putin and Russia were involved. With no real proof. No real proof regarding that accusation. So you see what the deep state, the global deep state is doing, the establishment is doing around the world. We have the CIA affecting attacks against Russia, canceling elections in Romania. And we have other things going on, probably launching an attack against X. So we have the intelligence services going rogue globally. And then we have the resistance domestically of people aligned with the establishment resisting their being uprooted. The New York Times is reporting Justice Department official says she was fired after opposing restoring Mel Gibson's gun rights. Liz G. Oyer, the former pardon attorney, said she was not told why she was dismissed, but that events unfolded. She feared that might lead to her firing. What are they talking about here? Well, they're talking about the fact that she was dismissed after she refused to recommend the actor Mel Gibson, a prominent supporter of President Trump's, should have his gun rights restored, according to the attorney and other people familiar with the situation. Elizabeth Oyer, the former pardon attorney, described the sequence of events as an alarming departure from long-standing practice, one that put public safety and the department's integrity at risk. Mr. Gibson had lost his gun rights as a result of a 2011 domestic violence misdemeanor. And that's important, and we're going to get to why. So about 2 weeks ago, Ms. Oyer was put on a working group to restore gun rights to people convicted of crimes, she said. That effort has been championed by some on the right who maintain that not all people with criminal convictions are dangerous or deserving of such ban. And what I'm getting to here is the fact that it's a misdemeanor. So unless you're convicted of a felony, that your constitutional rights stay intact. So if you're convicted of a misdemeanor, you don't lose the right to vote. You don't lose the right to bear arms. But they said because it's a domestic violence, which could be anything, and this took place in California, so you could only guess, that you get into an argument with your wife and she tries to do something and you grab her arm, whatever. All of a sudden you don't get your constitutional rights anymore. That's ridiculous. So I'm not a proponent for domestic violence or any violence, to be honest with you. However, people like this who said, oh, this guy's a prominent Trump supporter, I don't think he should have his gun rights restored. The whole commission was put together to restore people's gun rights. So That was the purpose of the commission, not to question the process. So obviously, as I just said, it's a misdemeanor, so shouldn't be any argument there. It's hard to say the individual aspects of the case. You know, I don't think your constitutionally protected rights should be infringed, shall not be infringed. So, you know, he's obviously his criminal history, Mel Gibson, he's a little out there. So I don't know, but I'm a firm believer that it would take a lot to infringe on your constitutionally protected rights. Period. One American News reports Tulsi Gabbard announces revocation of security clearances for numerous Biden admin officials. Who are these people? Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Lisa Monaco, Mark Zed, Norman Eason, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, and Andrew Weissman, along with 51 signers of the Hunter Biden disinformation letter. And Gabbard's, in the era of transparency, put this all on X. People that are not in the government anymore shouldn't have security clearance. So it's a pain in the ass to reinstate it, so be it. But I don't know why people like Letitia James and Alvin Bragg and attorney Andrew Weissman had these DC security clearances or federal security clearances. Why? No one seems to be able to answer why Letitia James has a national security clearance. I know why. She's an agent of the deep state, as is Alvin Bragg. And what is the deep state? It's not just Washington. It's not just the federal government. Don't forget the federal government and the bureaucracy there within is controlled by corporations and rich individuals. A conspiracy, if you will, a cabal of corporations and rich individuals. And corporations just hide rich individuals, shell companies, NGOs, etc. And the federal people within the federal bureaucracy. One American News, 83% of U.S. aid programs set for cancellation, according to Marco Rubio. Good. And if you're not watching, New York Post is reporting House Rules Committee advances stopgap government funding bill in an effort to avoid shutdown. And apparently the Democrats are willing or want a government shutdown. I say bring it on. I don't have a problem with government shutdowns. But because they're blocking a bill. So the Democrats are now the obstructionists, and the establishment are always obstructionists when they don't want legislation passed. They pitch a hissy fit. So they launched the filibuster that they wanted to get rid of to block the bill. And now we're again we're at another CR instead of reconciliation. So we already had a CR back at the end of the year, 2024, and now we're back there. You know, instead of reconciling that CR with an actual legislation. Now, no wonder Congress has a bad record is because they're not legislating. And of course, why is because they want to cut spending. And so liberals who like to spend liberally don't want that to happen. More news from Syria. The Associated Press, Syria's government signs a breakthrough deal with Kurdish-led authorities in the northeast. Now, why is this important? Because that's how you know it was the Americans who supported the jihadists to go and topple the Assad regime. Why? Because the Islamic militants, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, do not like the Kurds. Why? Because they're not Muslim. And so they're Islamic fanatics, Islamic militants. They battled the Kurds, or they have been for years. The problem is that both the Kurds and the Islamic militants are both supported by the USA and the CIA. So that's why they sign a breakthrough deal, but still the Alawites are being butchered in Damascus. One American News, hundreds of civilians killed in Syria as ruling jihadists clash with Assad loyalists. The Associated Press, again, 2 days of clashes and revenge killings in Syria leave more than 1,000 people dead. That is the CIA. One American News again. Tulsi Gabbard Syria warning to Senate proven true as Al-Qaeda-linked regime slaughters minority Christians and Alawites. And to the Atlantic. Hey, just one last thought on Syria. As I mentioned yesterday, this is the final act of the Arab Spring that they tried to launch for 10 years now, for over a decade, over 12 years. And so now they got their Arab Spring in Syria, and what happened with the Arab Spring in other countries like Egypt? Exactly what you see happening in Syria. Well, the Islamic militants start killing Christians, killing gays, killing minority, and Alawites are Muslim, but they're not Wahhabist Muslim. And so it must be nice for the Kurds to say, at least, we could cut a deal. So the Atlantic is reporting Doge's plan to replace humans with AI are already underway. So it's not okay to do it in the federal government, but if you're doing it in a corporation, it's fine. AI's purpose is to displace humans. And the Atlantic goes so far as saying replace humans. So that's scary. Whether it's Doge, they just make it scary, or sound scary because it's Doge. Axios, State Department to use AI to revoke visas from foreign students who appear pro-Hamas. My feelings on AI are disturbing because it's, does truth follow fiction? Is it going to be like The Matrix? Or Terminator? Could very well be. And people have been warning about the dangers of AI for years and years and years, and because the danger is inherent in its purpose or its goal. Wall Street Journal, stay with me now. ICE arrests Columbia student who helped lead pro-Palestinian protests. Mahmoud Khalil was picked up by immigration officers who said they were acting on State Department orders to revoke his green card. His lawyer says, well, that's good. I think. Like I said, if you're here under the permission of the United States, well, the United States can revoke that permission at any time it sees fit. Because the problem is they're not standing outside a university with signs. They're first of all, they're masking. Then they're openly engaging in anti-Semitic behavior, harassing Jewish students, etc. Not to mention showing support for a group that was labeled a terrorist group by the State Department. One American News. Trump administration cuts $400 million in federal funding to Columbia University in light of anti-Semitism concerns. As I just mentioned, it's nothing really to blather on about. You want to protest? You do it outside. You hold your signs. You use your megaphone. But as soon as you start harassing people, whether you're in front of an abortion clinic or in front of a university, that ceases to become a protest. Trump warns that arrest of Palestinian activists at Columbia will be the first of many. Hallelujah. Like I said, I'm not anti-immigration per se, but I think we should have a moratorium on immigration for 1 year as we strengthen the border and begin deportations. And once the border is closed and our immigration system is, let's say, tightened up, the vetting is more stringent, etc., then maybe we could talk about amnesty. Although I'm not a big fan of amnesty, I think there is some room, but you cannot be granting amnesty when you have open borders. And it should be a one-time amnesty for a certain section of people. They either qualify or they don't qualify, and then no more amnesty. And no more allowing people to cross in the country illegally and stay here. Again, from One American News, Agriculture Secretary cancels $600,000 grant to study menstrual cycles in trans men. Washington Times, judge issues restraining order against Education Department over Trump spending pause. As I said, if money is allocated, then it's difficult to unallocate or not spend the money on what it was allocated for. Going into the text of the article, a federal judge on Monday ordered the Education Department to restart spending programs in 8 Democratic-led states that have sued over President Trump's spending pause. Judge Myung Joon, a Biden appointee who sits in Massachusetts, said the states had been counting on the money, and the decision to cut it off likely violates federal spending laws. I think it does. But he issued a temporary restraining order. That would say the money has to be granted. So the thing is with a TRO in spending, once the checks are sent, you're going to have a hard time getting it back. Delay, deny, defend. Post-millennial Florida man wins legal battle against county over fines for hanging pro-Trump banners. Their laws cannot supersede my First Amendment right, this guy says. I thought I had the text for that. I don't. It's this guy in Florida. The county sued him for hanging big, massive banners on his big home. He wins. Good for him. If I lived across the street, that might be annoying, but hey, man. Free speech. The Federalist is reporting CCP activists smear Americans as racist for securing land from foreign adversaries. So I'll just get into the lead here. Makes more sense. Texas Senate State Affairs Committee hearing on March 6th at a parade of witnesses, roughly 30 people, but all but 4 were likely naturalized citizens or green card holders from China, rail against SB 17, a bill authorized by Senator Lois Kolkhorst, a Republican from Brenham, to stop hostile foreign entities from snapping up Texas land. Obviously, you go to these things. There are probably millions, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Chinese naturalized or citizens of China, that Chinese nationals that have to report to the Communist Party or do the work of the Communist Party. So if the CCP says, we're going to make your relative's life difficult unless you show up at this meeting and speak on behalf of the Chinese entities snapping up American land. And it is of concern because they've been trying to do that around sensitive military bases. One American News, DOJ charges 2 active soldiers, 1 former soldier accused of stealing top secret data to sell to China. Well, good. And what you saw in Trump's first term, you'll probably see in this term too, is that there were many, many investigations and arrests for Chinese espionage. The Biden administration, there were almost none. I don't want to say there weren't any, but a lot of people were apprehended by states, and once they're apprehended by entities other than the federal government almost has to do something. Fox News is reporting creepy humanoid robot moves using 1,000 eerie artificial muscles. Clone Robotics, a Polish-American company, has recently unveiled its groundbreaking humanoid robot, Protoclone, sparking both fascination and unease across the internet. This eerily feels lifelike android represents a significant advancement in biomimetic robotics, closely replicating human anatomy and movements were never seen before. Protoclone stands as an impressive 6 feet tall and boasts a skeleton made of 206 polymer bones, mirroring the human skeletal structure. What truly sets this robot apart is a muscular system featuring over 1,000 artificial muscles, powered by Clone Robotics' proprietary myofiber technology. I just keep on the tech because, like I said, the robotics revolution, humanoid robotics revolution, is close. It's not far behind AI. Because first it's going to be AI, and then right behind it is going to be the humanoid robots. Like, robotics are very prolific and ubiquitous now, but they're not humanoid robots. And once humanoid robots, then they can be trained to do things like electrical work, plumbing, things that humanoids have specialized in. Humanoids. That humans have specialized in, and it's hard. Or like AI could do managerial things that you do on your computer. And that's why they moved everybody onto computers, because then the computer could run itself instead of you running the computer, and then you're out of a job. Livelihood. This is from last week. Fox News is reporting Secret Service shoots man in overnight armed confrontation near White House. The shooting took place after police were notified about a suicidal man in the area. So there's a lot of different, was this guy an agent? Maybe. It doesn't sound like he was, but could be. I mean, obviously the investigation into Ryan Routh, alliterative name again, so that he is an agent, and that Butler was, that Crooks, Thomas Crooks and Butler was working with an outside entity and purportedly training with the feds at gun ranges. Whether he knew he was working for the feds or who he thought he was working for or whatever. All right, big news today. Mediaite is reporting Infowars reporter brutally murdered in Texas. Blood all over the parking lot. So this is White. What was his first name? So one of the reporters for Infowars was brutally murdered outside his apartment. It seems apparent that this was a targeted killing. Now, whether you agree that the guy outside the White House was an agent, this is a targeted killing of an Infowars reporter. This is a sign to Alex Jones. Was this assassin? Was he connected to intelligence? I think he was. Either witting or unwittingly, it could very well be some left-winger who thinks he's doing it for Antifa. But the intelligence groups control Antifa. So I say intelligence groups because I don't necessarily mean the NSA. If you don't think the DNC has their own security, their own intelligence operation, much like all corporations do, they all have their own intelligence, security. It's called security, but if you don't think your corporation is doing surveillance, electronic surveillance on you, particularly during work hours, you're mistaken, because now they have things like AI and crawlers that just, if any of your online behavior sends up a red flag, you might get a talking to, or they just might watch you. Especially if you work for a union, you have the right to look into your personal file at any time, and I suggest you doing that periodically, because they can put shit in there. They're supposed to notify your union if they put disciplinary stuff in your file, but they could put intelligent stuff in your file. It's not disciplinary. You'd never know. BBC, Facebook was hand in glove with China. And if you didn't know what was going on here, this is kind of old news, is that a former senior Facebook executive told BBC how the social media giant worked with China. We knew this. They all did. And that's why they were so pervasive in the censorship in this country as well, because they'd learned from the best. But this is old, so they're just trying to sully Facebook now that Zuckerberg has come to the other side, so to speak. And then we get another warning from the establishment through the Atlantic magazine in this opinion piece by Craig Spencer. Diseases are coming. And he says he survived Ebola and know how lethal Donald Trump's assault on America outbreak preparedness could be. As a Doge's slash and burn. That's all you hear is the Republicans and Trump and Doge, they're either attacking or assaulting. And those words are inflammatory. Although if it's a euphemism for something you do outside of the physical realm, they use it constantly. Like trans people are being attacked by the government, you know. And of course, I had to put this up against the New York Times article. As Ebola spreads in Uganda, Trump aid freeze hinders efforts to contain it. U.S. officials fear 2 more people are reported dead from the disease, and dozens are in isolation as outbreak grows. The problem is with the African culture is the washing of the body and close proximity to corpses, and people that are sick with Ebola. You can't be. Even a corpse of an Ebola patient can spread the disease. We're going to get into the health, a little bit more on health here. Wall Street Journal, Utah to become first state to ban fluoride in public water. Most public health experts say the mineral additive is a crucial protector against tooth decay. Show me the studies that drinking fluoride helps your teeth. Not putting it on your teeth. You put it on your teeth, it helps to fight cavities, but drinking it, fine. Then the Wall Street Journal also says inside America's fluoride rebellion, Florida is the latest battleground in a series of standoffs, adding the chemical to local water supplies, with Utah being the first in the state, first in the country, the first state to ban it. The cost in terms of human health is far too high to be fooling around. Is it? As I just said, show me the studies that say drinking fluoride helps your bones or your teeth or anything. Wouldn't you need to take calcium? Wouldn't that help? Apparently, putting fluoride on your teeth, fluoride treatments, helps kill bacteria and protect your teeth against decay. But I don't know why drinking what is known as toxic waste from aluminum smelting, apparently. We talked about this yesterday. Wall Street Journal, nuclear power's revival is here. What do we do with all the radioactive waste? Tons of refuse goes into temporary storage every year. It's temporary. As I explained yesterday with David Pogue's wonderful segment on Sunday morning, where he was talking about how wonderful nuclear power will be in the AI revolution, it produces toxic waste. Where do you put it? You put it into space? I mean, what? And it's got a half-life of 1,000 years. So it's never going to go away. Not only that, but you have the risk of nuclear accidents with power plants. So you have all this fissile waste. Because if we ever discover a way to contain a fusion reaction, then we're going to have no waste. But it's the fission reaction, which is dirty nuclear power. Trying to wrap it up here. Associated Press, stay with me now. Kennedy and influencers bash seed oils, baffling nutrition scientists. We know what's going on here. And it's the same thing they do all the time. It's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, no, we found something wrong with it. What is it? It's like decaffeinated coffee. Seed oils are typically made by pressing and crushing the seeds. Well, that's nice. And then processing them further with chemicals and heat to remove elements that could leave the oil cloudy or with an unpleasant taste or odor. So to make it a better product, you treat it with chemicals. That's why I don't drink decaffeinated coffee, is because they decaffeinate it using chemicals. So why do I want chemicals in my food? I don't. And then they later in the article, they talk about hexane, which is a chemical that's created through this process. But they say, oh, in cooking, it evaporates. But it's in the oil. So we don't know what the hell it does. What if you put it in salad dressing and you don't cook, you cook with it? Then you're going to get the hexane. And it's very similar to aspartame, where in your body, the aspartame turns into wood alcohol, which could make you blind. So if you drink Diet Coke or anything with aspartame and you find your vision going, stop drinking Diet Coke. Let's go to the measles outbreak. Fox News, measles more likely to be severe among malnourished, RFK says. Proper nutrition along with vaccines could play a role in the disease protection, experts suggest, as well as RFK. He's trying to say, as many people say, is to boost your immune system, you take certain supplements that can protect you from severe disease. Just like they said with, if you get the booster, your COVID won't be so bad. There's no really way to prove that. New York Times, Kennedy links measles outbreak to poor diet and health, citing fringe theories. In a recent interview, the health secretary also suggested that the measles vaccine had harmed children in West Texas, center of the outbreak. Well, maybe. He goes on to say he issued a muffled call for vaccinations in the affected community. And then he suggested that measles vaccine injuries were more common than known. He later asserted that natural immunity to measles gained through infection somehow also protected against cancer and heart disease. Maybe. But the thing is, you see what the New York Times did there, a muffled call for vaccinations. But he called for vaccinations in the affected community. And then he suggested that measles vaccines could cause injury. Apparently, the oral vaccine causes polio. The oral polio vaccine causes polio. He cheered on questionable treatments like cod liver oil, God forbid, and said that local doctors had achieved almost miraculous and instantaneous recoveries with steroids or antibiotics. But they don't disprove his claims. So that's my problem. If it's ridiculous claim or whatever, then just disprove it. Again, included those, Kennedy said that people should have access to good medicines, including those who want them, vaccines. In highly unvaccinated communities like Mennonites, it's something that we recommend. So what RFK Jr. is recommending here is vaccines. More stories from BBC. Doctors didn't warn women of risky sex drug urges. What is this? So drugs that were prescribed for movement disorders, including restless leg syndrome, had the side effect of risky sexual behavior. GlaxoSmithKline, a link between dopamine agonist drugs caused deviant sexual behavior. But there were no, this is another black box warning. There were no explicit references to the side effect in patient pamphlets, but the doctors were warned, and the doctors didn't warn the patients. So I don't know. This might be some kind of experiment why a drug would make you engage in risky behavior. Reuters is reporting U.S. CDC plans study into vaccines and autism. Good. And then Utah again. I had this in here. Utah, first state to ban fluoride in drinking water. And the Federalist, concealed carriers do a better job of stopping active shooters rather than police. Concealed carriers, meaning of firearms, do a better job of stopping active shooters than police. 51% of active shooters were stopped by concealed carry permit holders compared to 44% stopped by police, but also law enforcement officers faced increased risk, 70% more likely to be wounded or killed than armed civilians because they make an easier target because of their uniform. How did we do there? I think it was about 55 minutes. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, share the podcast. Remember, you're under attack biologically and psychologically, so stay hip to the trick. Be sure to read into what they're telling you. We are under attack, so we're going to have 6 months of increasing violence and propaganda, so be aware of that. Check me out on social media, X, Facebook, Get Our Minds, Truth Social. Check out my other website, libpop.org. Learn about libertarian populism. Check the links down in the description. Also, there is some Liberty merch, a link to a Liberty merch site where you can buy hoodies, t-shirts. It's to the Alex Jones store. Go and buy a t-shirt there. Use my link. I get a couple bucks. And it supports Infowars and Alex Jones. And they're mourning today the death of one of their reporters, Jamie White. So rest in peace, Jamie. And there won't be a Tuesdays with Perry tonight. I got a meeting I got to go to tonight, so we won't be able to do it. Maybe tomorrow. So in any case, I will see you tomorrow. Stay hip to the trick. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy. I like